G'day folks, welcome to another episode of Learn to Paint TV. Rod Moore from the Learn to Paint Academy with you again. And this week we're going to do a nice little river reflection scene. I took this photo on one of my many travels. This is down at the Scenic Rim in southeast Queensland. And I just love the way those trees there are reflecting into the water. We're going to use the Moore method of painting. And of course the Moore method of painting is 3 steps, 3 colours and 3 brushes. So let's have a look at our palette here. Our 3 colours that we're going to use for 90% of our painting is the French ultramarine blue, the permanent alizarin crimson and the yellow ochre. Okay, so that's our basic palette. Our blue, our red and our yellow, our primaries. And then we will add some cadmium yellow light as a booster just to get some of those highlights, and perhaps a touch of phthalo green later on. And I've got titanium white as well, of course. Okay, I've just got a 9-inch by 12-inch canvas here. It's just a piece of canvas roll taped to my backboard to get us started, and I'm going to use this little medium-sized flat brush with a bit of thinner. Now the important thing here is during this drawing stage that we keep our paint fairly thin and loose. We don't want thick paint, whether you're using acrylics or oils at this stage. See, that's too thick, that paint on the palette there. And that will just cause us problems, right? So what we want to do is just use plenty of that thinner, and we'll just thin that down. I've mixed up a lot of paint there, but I can use that for my blocking as well. So I'll get more thinner on the side here. See that? I'm just loosening it up on the side. I'll have to use too much thinner to get right into all of it. And it doesn't matter what tone it is, just a dark, muddy tone, but keep it nice and thin like that there. Okay. Let's pull some of that out of my brush with a bit of paper towel. And starting point here is really to get in our shapes of our river embankments. So I think that embankment is going to come to around about there. This one here is sort of sitting around about there. Got those nice warm grassy tones on that embankment there. Okay, so this one wraps up. Well, then from there you've got this big dark tree mass that pokes out there and then runs down into a dark there. So this river embankment then wraps its way sort of around there. Okay. So you can see I'm just picking out these big shapes here. Really important. There's quite a bit of water in this river here, so we're seeing a lot of that, which is good. Okay. And then in here we've got another big tree. It's all big dark, and then it's reflecting beautifully into there. That's our main sort of focal point, I think, is that tree. It's catching some light on this side, so we'll pop it in so that we'll just get that a bit wider. Just make a little delineating note there. There's light on that side of it, and then it runs this dark shadow up the back there. Okay, really important that shadow, we get that in. And then, so I'm going to simplify this mass of trees here. I'll just introduce another tree. Now they're not gum trees, they look like kind of pine trees, I guess you'd call them. So let's just simplify those out there. Show a little bit of this embankment in here. Okay, and then the embankment sort of runs down through there, and that's where we get a nice warm tones in there, those warm yellows. Okay. So then all of this is a reflection that runs pretty much out of the bottom of the canvas there, which is good. Okay, so I've just simplified it right down. As I said, there's a lot of information in these trees here, but we've got to be careful we don't try and get them all in. And then how about we just do a simple mountain range in the background here. Alright friends, what is step 1? Pretty simple. It's a matter of just finding the big shapes and mapping them in correctly into your canvas. Okay, because we're now in step 2, I'm going to use a big brush. I want to get those darks in and get those established. So we're really setting up our values pattern, and we don't want to muck around with this with a small brush, so that's why I always use a bigger brush. I'm going to add a little bit of yellow ochre, just a touch, into this mix here. Okay, we'll just grey it back a little. And again, we want this paint to be fairly loose. Okay, don't use thick paint because it'll make it the waiting time before we can start the next step to be a bit too long. Okay, now I'm going to treat this shadow as being slightly darker from the shadows in these trees and reflections. So what that means is that this is going to be my darkest dark. Okay, and I'm just going to block it in. So what we're really painting here, just for clarity, is the shadows in the trees. We're not painting trees. Okay, we're just painting dark and light. That's the if you can get that concept, you know, big shapes and then darkness and lightness, and then once we've got the dark and light, which is our values working, then we worry about temperature and saturation. So we'll get to that. So notice I've got this really interesting sort of outline here of the tree. Just be careful you don't paint your trees as round sort of you know, lollipops, right? A big mistake that very easy to make. Now I'll just take some more of that because in these foreground grasses here, there's this lovely little patch of dark right there. And there's another one right there, and there's a few little hints of there. So we're going to work our warmer green grasses around those shadow tones in that foreground there. Okay, looking good already. So as we move into these ones, we're going to go for darks as well, but I'm going to push it slightly to the green side because they're green trees, right? So what's actually in shadow there is you know, green foliage. If it was in light, it would look really green. So I just want to keep it slightly to the green side. So for that purpose, no, you don't have to do this, but I'm just going to pop in just a tiny little bit of phthalo. You don't have to. Right? You just put a little bit more blue and yellow into this mix rather than the red. Okay. And that's looking kind of how I had envisaged it. So a little bit more thinner. And notice how I'm holding the brush. I'm just going to scrub that paint in. And the reason why I do it that way is to resist the temptation of trying to paint a tree. So a little bit less control in the brush, I find, helps me to get a looser feel. And that looser feel is what we're going for with sort of impressionist style painting. You know, it's realism to a degree, but we're not looking to create a direct representation of the scene in front of us, right? We're not ultra realism. Okay, so I'm just pushing that one a little bit bluer, so cooling that down a little bit. We're going to put most of our warm highlight around this tree here, so the eye gets sort of drawn into here. I know it's sort of breaking the rules of composition, where you're supposed to put things on the 1/3 mark. But hey, sometimes we have to be rebels. No, there's no absolutes in painting. It's always, you know, what makes you feel good. What is it you want to do? That's the absolute. As long as you get a result that you're happy with, it's a pleasing outcome, then that's all that matters. Okay, so get those darks in for that. Now just with those darks starting to come into the picture here, get a little bit thinner, we'll get some of this white here, we'll get some blue, I'll get a little pinhead of the red, tiniest pinhead of the yellow, and let's see what we've got here. So this has got to look like the distant mountain range. You know, this is part of the Scenic Rim. If you've ever been there, it's beautiful old volcanic region, and the Scenic Rim is the mountain range formed from the crater of a massive old volcano, which I think is said to be one of the biggest on the planet. So it is huge. So what we want is this to look like it's sitting off in the distance. There won't be any details. It's got to be slightly darker than the sky value, right? At the where it meets the sky. This wants to be just slightly darker than that, a little bit more mauve. So you can see I'm leaning towards the red with this. We'll just light up that brush, and then let's just come in. That looks pretty reasonable. Now keep in mind this is the block in, so we can always adjust as we go. Pop a little bit over there. You just need to work a little bit of it into the trees so that it looks like it's running in behind the trees there. Let us now get in our sky. We'll go to our lightest tone here. The sky. Not a lot of sky. We're not going to worry about putting too much emphasis on the sky. We can't have everything at the same level of detail. This painting is clearly not about the sky, it's more about the reflection in the water. So if you overly detail your sky, it's going to compete with what the interest point of the painting is. A little pinhead of yellow, just for a bit of warmth. Because this is down at the, it's the sky down at the lower part. So you're always going to have a little bit of warmth rising up from the land. Okay. Now my paint there's a little bit on the thick side because I tend to, if you've watched any of the episodes previous, you'll know that I tend to not come back into the sky too much. I want to try and get that in one hit, whereas everything else that we've blocked in, I'm happy to come and work back over that as we adjust the painting. So let's just mass in. I've got quite a dark blue there. I'll just come up to the edges of these reflections. Okay. Without smudging them too much. Just get a little touch lighter as it comes back. Very good. Now, the next part of our block-in is going to be getting in some of those greens. So what we're going to do is just put in they're pretty light greens, they're pretty warm and light. We're going to put in a medium green first. So we use ultramarine blue, the yellow ochre, and I'm going to come into our cadmium yellow light here. And we pop this in as a sort of a base colour, as a block-in colour, and then we can come back and go a bit lighter. We can come back over this, and this is again, we need to paint this fairly thinly. Right? Let me see, is that the right? Probably go a touch lighter. Don't get it too dark out the back there. Okay. So even that's too dark, I feel. Get my palette knife and just pull some of that back. It's a little bit too dark. So we're going to get this nice, warm, glowing reflection on there, on the main tree there. So it's got to have contrast against something. It'll be a darker value than what this grass is here, right? So that's better. So again, I just want to stress we're just blocking in here. Keeping that paint nice and thin gives us the opportunity to be able to make adjustments to it. just got to be careful I don't get that paint too muddy because I'm painting into those dark patches there. And let's come into this part here, but we'll just warm that up a little. So we'll go a little bit more cad yellow light and a little bit more yellow ochre. Go a little pinhead of the red just for the fun of it. Whoop, that's too much red. Okay. So it's going to be a warmer tone. And if you've been following us, you'll know that warm tones come more forward. And cool tones recede. Very important little concept to understand. Don't fuss too much with it because we're going to just get all this in, give it an hour or two to settle down, and then we can come back and refine it after that. Well friends, that brings us to the end of step 2, our blocking. Happy with the way this is going. You know, as I always do in these projects, we get to this point, I think it's a good idea just to let it set for an hour or two. That thinner will dry out and then the paint becomes far more workable for the next step. And if you're using acrylics, you want to make sure this dries off bone dry at this point. And then it'll make your life a lot easier to work back into it in step 3. So I'm going to leave this as a break. I'll see you soon and we'll get underway with step 3. Cheers. Okay, welcome back folks. We're now going to do step 3 of our little river reflection scene here. I think this is going along quite nicely, and we'll work on these trees, the reflections, a little bit on the grass, and we'll have a nice little painting. So we're not going to do a huge amount of detailing in this one. So we'll start off and we'll just get in a little bit of warm tone into these trees here. Get those working. So we'll start off with a little bit of the ultramarine blue and a little bit of the yellow ochre. That gives us our sort of greeny tone, but I just want to get a little touch of the cad yellow in there as well. And let's just see how that looks up here. Now I'm using a big brush, but I just want to make some sort of fairly subtle marks with it. Make sure you don't get any hard edges. Can be a little bit of a trap with these big bristle brushes, big flat brushes. Okay, I just need to warm that up a little. It's a little on the dark side. Okay. And make sure you don't paint out all those darks. Those darks are important in there. I think we can come back and we can punch that up a little bit more as we progress this, but for the moment I'll just come in and they're the same sort of trees, so I'll use same tone there. Now I just pushed into the sky a little bit hard, got a bit of that white on my brush, so I'll just pull that out. Let's just mix up some more paint. Need a little bit thicker paint in there. Just come back in and I'll strengthen that. And again, make sure we don't paint out all the darks. It's one of the biggest mistakes that I see. I was in a workshop the other day, one that I was in as a student, and I watched everyone dutifully go and paint out all their darks. and lose the effect that they were going for. Now just on this one, it's catching a little bit of rim lighting along just the top there, a couple of little spots, but the rest of it's pretty much in dark. Okay, now we'll take that same dark tone here and we'll put it into our reflections, but with the reflections we don't want to drag down into the water. Okay, we don't want to be trying to paint it exactly. It's more of a downward drag that's going to give us that effect that we're looking for. Okay. I'll just take my smaller brush. I'm going to just create a little embankment area just so we can get some delineation. So I'll use a little bit of a mud tone, right? So I'll use titanium white, yellow ochre, a little touch of the alizarin crimson. See it's a touch too warm. Lighten it off with the yellow ochre, touch more white. And the key here is to not put this everywhere because there's not really a muddy embankment on this as such. But I'm just going to add it in because I think that will give us that little bit of separation of what's reflection and what's not. Okay, and I'll put a little bit more mud embankment there. So now we've got sort of a sense of where the river embankment is as such. I'll take a little bit of that green just to mix it in, and let's just see if we can just get a little bit more vibrancy into this foreground here. Over the shadows a little bit, but don't let your brush get dirty. Okay. I'll use just a tiny little bit of that phthalo green just to get a little bit of shift and a bit of interest in there. So the reason why I've done that here first is because now I can come back into our distant field and I know that I don't want the green to be as vibrant, the greeny yellow, as what we've just done. But I do want to pick it up a little bit in parts as well. Okay. Put a little touch of the red in there for a bit of warmth, and let's just, so it's definitely more vibrant than what we had. Okay. Flick up some little indications of grasses and so on along there. And let's just come in with a little bit of this warmer greeny yellow and just clip along the edges here. Okay, now get some of that little bit of brighter green. Punch it up a little. Okay, so this is just a slightly lighter value than what I had before, which is okay. And when I first mixed it up, I thought, oh, I haven't quite got that right, but I can just work it in with what I've already got there. Leave some of the darker tone to come through. And I want to keep this beginner level, so I'm not going to do too much more because I think at this point, you know, pretty much everyone can follow along what we've done. And as with all the projects on Learn to Paint TV, you know, I want to keep them at a level where anyone can have a go. But there's a lot more obviously that could be done here, like I put in this little bit of muddy embankment just there. I lost a bit of that shadow, but that's okay. Pop in a little bit more of that shadow just in through there. Get some white on my palette knife there. Just a little ribbon of that white. And let's just come in here and go. Just in a few spots, but keep it subtle. You don't want to overdo it. Some little tree trunks. And they look really effective just for a couple of little marks. Now the palette knife's a little bit rigid. I probably could use a smaller palette knife than this one. So you know, a little liner brush would do the same, create the same sort of effect really. Okay. A few little bits like that, get a slightly darker value, and in the reflection don't put it all in. Right. No point replicating it exactly. It's another step in the progression towards learning how to paint. And it is just a gradual step-by-step process, so you have to keep that in mind. Take this tape off. It's always good pulling the tape back and revealing the finished painting. Well, there we go folks, our little river reflections painting. I think it came up pretty good as a little demonstration. Got these beautiful reflections, it sort of draws you in following the river there, and a fun little painting, right? And you've seen how easy the process is. The Moore method of painting just makes it really simple and easy for you to follow. So I know I say it every week, but have a go at this one, right? I think this is a project that you can easily replicate at home and get good results with, and I know you're going to love it when you do. So please have a go at it and enjoy it. You know, enjoy the process of learning. Make sure you check out all of our other episodes, Learn to Paint TV. I'll put the web address underneath me here. And if you haven't done so already, please come by to the Learn to Paint Academy and register for our free course that we give away. And again, I'll put the link underneath me here and in the description and so on. So register for the free course. You'll learn more about the Moore method of painting. You know, 30,000 plus people have already been through, learned about the Moore method of painting. So come and join us. And you also get 4 different painting demonstrations that are maybe a little bit more in depth than this one. And you'll progress your painting. So come and join us at the link under the screen here, and I'll see you there. But happy painting till next week, and I'll see you next week in Learn to Paint TV. Cheers for now.